r/AskReddit. Doctors of Reddit, what made you say how the frick is this person still alive? Older woman called 911 for chest pain. Her vital signs were crap, and she had the look that anyone who's ever seen a patient about to die will recognize instantly. Her EKG suggested multiple blockages in her coronary arteries, and we had to put her on a ventilator shortly after she got to the because she deteriorated so quickly. Cath lab confirmed the EKG findings, complete blockage of one artery and 99% blockage of two other major arteries. Unfortunately, it was too extensive to resolve with PCI, so the only option was to fly her to the university hospital in the city for an emergent triple bypass. It turned out that she'd had multiple episodes like this, but not quite as severe, over the last 6 months, and had refused bypass surgery not once, not twice, but 3 times in favor of a Mediterranean diet. Well, at this point she didn't have much say anymore and family agreed, so off to the OR she went. I took care of her again about 4 months later, and she actually seemed to have made a remarkable recovery. She triple bypassed a triple bypass. Edit. Holy crap, my first gold and silver for this? Cha. As a student, had a young guy come in who self-inflicted a 22 to the inside of his mouth and passed out. Awoke the next morning, didn't recall the night prior, went to work. 2 hours into work he says he's not feeling right and starts acting odd. Co-workers call EMS. They take him in, and the ED is working him up, and in the process notices a mix of clear fluid and blood in the back of his mouth. They call ENT, and get a caught head. Shows 11 or so bullet fragments throughout his noggin. The guy was acting by that time completely unfazed. I was very fazed. Kind of a retelling, but one time a cadaver on which I was performing an autopsy had a lung which was flipped upside down. When I tried to flip it to the proper position, bloop, it flipped right back to upside down. After some due diligence we realized the lung was a transplant, and the surgeons who performed the transplant had attached the organ incorrectly. The lung had been fighting to be upside down its whole life, and this other man, after 15 or so years, the man eventually moved in a way that allowed it to flip over, resulting in his death. Not really a how the frick is this person still alive, but more of a how the frick did this person live this long with this condition. Best one I saw was a guy shot in the back, half an inch from his spine. He was totally stable sitting and talking to us. We saw the bullet sitting in between his SVC, aorta and esophagus with injuries to no vital structure. Walked out a day or two later with just a band-aid. Literal millimeter either way and he would have been a corpse, paralyzed or needed major reconstructive surgery. Edit. To be clear, we saw the bullet on CT scan. Not a doctor, but the person everyone asked how the frick is this person still alive. Got my driver's license late, at age of 25. 2 months later I'm driving into town, when I lose control of the car. Front right tire popped for no apparent reason. It swirls out on the right side of the road. I pull back, and when I get back on the road the car flips sideways, and goes straight out to the trees. I was doing 90 km/h. 60 miles per hour-ish, knocked down a couple of smaller trees, and ended up wrapped around a larger one. So many things went right for me to not die. The driver's seat gave into the pressure and folded back, so when the roof got pushed in from the tree it didn't crush me. The angle I was in due to the seat giving in meant that there was about half an inch room between my head and ceiling of the car. Survival instincts kicked in, and I managed to squeeze out of a broken window without too much damage. Walked out to the side of the road where a car came driving back. He was driving the direction I was, but was ahead of me. Saw smoke from the dry dirt where I crashed. Turned around and went to help me. He called 911. Second car to show up was a nurse on her way to work at the hospital, so she had a first aid kit and patched my 2 cuts up. Next thing I know, firefighters and police and ambulance show up and no one believes I'm the driver of the car wrapped around that tree, because that person should be dead. I knew 2 of the firefighters personally, and they told me later on that they saw it was my car and were already prepared to find my dead body in the car when they arrived, and I sat there on the ground and said, "Hey Kevin and Marcus." The relief in their face when they saw me was quite fun. Got in the ambulance, they pumped morphine in me. I joked all the way to the hospital and the doctor asked if he could share my story with people because I was a freaking legend. Pics includes one where I'm high on morphine. Edit. Holy crap, this blew up. Thanks for my first gold as well. Car. VW Model 2. Reason for morphine. Precautionary due to me being in shock and actually my leg did hurt. They were also worried about spinal injuries. Thanks for all the kind words as well. 15 years ago my mum dated a guy who had both a brain tumor and leukemia. To treat the leukemia they had to stop treating the brain tumor and vice versa. He was given 2 years to live. He told my mum that he needed to focus on getting his affairs in order and spend time with his kids. They'd only been dating a few months, very casually. Saw the dude a few weeks ago, still kicking. Still has the tumor. They successfully treated the leukemia, but now he has osteoporosis and a sort of not epilepsy. They found out he had brittle bone when he had a seizure and broke a lot of bones falling down. But he's just getting on with it. Couldn't kill the guy with an axe. Maybe he was just bad at breakups so invented an elaborate ruse. I'm still fairly new in my training but one of the first crazy recoveries I've seen. College kid was out drinking with his buddies and had a bit too much to drink. He presumably aspirates some of his vomit and it causes this massive inflammatory reaction in his lungs called ARDS. He goes from perfectly healthy to being on death's door within an hour. He gets transferred to our ICU in the middle of the night, completely unstable, on a ventilator, maximum doubt on 5 presses, life support meds to keep your blood pressure up, and is being considered for re-CMO. Edit. Basically like a temporary machine bypass of your heart and lungs, used as a last-ditch effort to save someone. His parents are on a last minute flight from out of state with no bags packed to get to their son. Our team is concerned that he won't make it through the night and braces friends for the worst. The treatment for ARDS is actually something called pronouncing, which is when you literally just flip the patient onto their stomach. And miraculously, 2 hours later he is off all presses, maintaining his own blood pressure, and while very sedated from all the meds he's able to respond to voice and shake and nod his head to questions. He makes a full recovery 4 days later. And vowing to stay away from alcohol for a while. Edit. To translate the medicalese a bit. ARDS equals acute respiratory distress syndrome. ECMO equals extracorporeal membrane oxygenation. ICU equals intensive care unit. Working in an Aboriginal community, a woman walked in complaining of a head itch behind her eye. She was told to take a seat, and as she turned around she had a butter knife sticking out the back of her skull. Apparently a drunk relative came home and stabbed her while she slept. Edit. Yes, she survived. Was flown back to Townsville for imaging, then on to Brisbane for surgery. How strong do you have to be to stab a butter knife through someone's skull? 7 strongs, or 3 strongs and 5 drunks? A nurse here. The one that immediately stands out in my mind was a diabetic who was, of course, non-compliant with her regimen and came in feeling like crap because her blood sugar was high. How high? Try just below 1300. For reference, diabetics are supposed to manage their blood levels and keep them no higher than 180, and even that's kind of pushing at the limit. By all accounts, this girl should have been in a diabetic coma, at best. Yet somehow she was conscious, walking, talking, and arguing with us every step of the way. Despite the fact that her pee was almost pure sugar and resembled crystallized honey, it was a 20-minute argument to get her to stop drinking her Diet Mountain Dew. She firmly believed that the fact that it was diet meant it was fine. Her blood was syrup. How we got enough to run blood tests was a minor miracle in itself. She kept complaining and asking for snacks and junk and she was not a pleasant person at all. Obviously, she gets to go up to the ICU. 20 minutes after we get her up and transferred, she walks out of the hospital. Why? She was mad that they only would give her water to drink. Priorities, I guess. Haven't seen her since, but I still wonder about her from time to time. Not a doctor, but worked 7 years in an inpatient psych ward. Had lots of alcoholics come in. One came in drunk but walking. His back when tested was 0.68. He was awake and mostly walking. Another man took a circular saw to his inner thigh. Got 1.5 in and all the way across. Somehow missed the femoral. Crazy bastard lived and had a sense of humor on day 2. You know those big 16 to 18 inch kitchen knives that everyone has. Had a lady come in with one sticking sideways out of her neck, handle on the left side and top sticking out the right. She went to, or, where they removed the knife in one of the most tense asshole clenched moments in history. Minimal bleeding. Apparently the knife split right between her major blood vessels and airway. Was lying right against them. Didn't scratch em. Absolutely incredible. Who has a 16-inch knife? My longest is an 8 inches. I keep impeccable honed. Another 10. That's longer than my rocker pizza cutter. Mistype on my part. I meant 6 to 8. I have an 18-inch machete. Must have been on my mind. My bad. Had a lady walk into the hospital with her face pointed at her chest. Her C1 vertebra had somehow fallen off C2, with her spinal cord delicately draped across the odontoid process. No damage to anything. Repaired with slow traction and a halo for a little while. Still baffles my mind 5 years later. Edit. Lots of questions. This little old lady said it happened slowly over time, but when she woke up from her nap that evening, something felt different. No traumatic injury reported. She had been sidestepping for almost a year. I haven't had time to draw a diagram yet, but I'll come back in a little while when I have a chance to doodle one. Edit 2. Behold. My attempt at a diagram of how she looked. I'm afraid it doesn't make the situation any less scary. As a paramedic it boggles my mind that these people will walk into the hospital while half of our patients call 911 for one bout of vomiting or diarrhea. Edit. For those commenting on cost. I work in Ontario, Canada. Cost for an ambulance ride is $45. And that's only if we transport. Sugars go low. Here's some D50. Free. Fall. Here's a hand up. Free. Need a quick checkup cause you're worried about something? Free. If you're on social assistance, even transport can be free. My dad walked a mile to see a friend and tried to walk up the stairs. Couldn't get up one step. Walked back 1 mile to his office, looked up who his doctor was, since he hadn't seen one in 20 years, and drove there. No appointment. Drive hooks him up to an EKG, but it's fine. Tells him there's a cardiologist next door. It's the end of the day. They'll see him. Just in case. They hook him up to a blood pressure monitor while he's on a treadmill. The monitor is behind him. He can't see it. He starts walking. They set a countdown timer for 3 minutes, and about 30 seconds in, one of the nurses steps out of the room. My dad is watching the timer and it counts down to 0. He feels fine and figures he's going home, but the door opens, and 2 ambulance attendants are wheeling in a gurney. While he was on the treadmill, his blood pressure dropped to 0, then restarted, then dropped to 0 again. The nurse who stepped out of the room dialed 911. They let him finish, because they figured, as soon as he stopped, the heart attack would start in earnest. Quadruple bypass later and he lived, but note, he said he never felt the same. A bypass is not a panacea. Edit. Panacea. Solution to all problems. Apparently, not a commonly used word. I'm not a doctor, but I was diagnosed with a dissonance at age 13 or so. Was just generally feeling lethargic, vomiting, dizzy. Mom calls the hospital with symptoms, and they said, if I had all 3 at the same time, to come in to be safe. Orderly or whatever checks my pulse in the lobby 30/15. He laughs, well this one's broken, and gets another machine 30/15 wait. What? Calls a doctor, they double check it, and run me to the ER for fluids. Again, not a doctor here, but apparently that's not even high enough to have a pulse. They had no clue how I was walking, let alone conscious, but saw the numbers, and after realizing it was accurate they freaked the hell out. And of course that freaked my mom out. Them telling my mom 30/15 is the BP of a dead person did not help. And then they said it's either autoimmune or cancer. My immune system apparently ate my adrenal glands. Now I'm on meds for life. Lucky me. On the bright side though, I never really have to worry about high blood pressure. As an EMT, I audibly gasped at the pressure. I have seen recently, dead people with better pressure than that. That's the BP of a pot plant. Thank you for watching. Have a great day, you internet people.